There's a short list of facts you absorbed before you were 10 years old. Living things breathe. Living things get old. Living things die. And if you lose a leg, you don't get a new one. Nobody sat you down and taught you those as laws. They just settled in, the way water is wet settled in. They feel less like biology and more like the terms and conditions of being alive. Except every single one of them has an exception. Not a loophole, not a technicality. An actual animal, alive right now, that simply doesn't comply. Some of these are going to sound exaggerated. They're not. One of them sat frozen in a drawer for 30 years and came out ready to start a family. And the last one breaks the rule nobody thought was negotiable. The one you're following right now, without having decided to. 8 animals, 8 rules. We'll start with the one that refuses to grow up. Number 8. The axolotl. Losing a limb is permanent. For you, obviously it is. Cut deep enough and your body's plan is simple. Seal it, scar it, move on. A scar is your body admitting it can't rebuild the original, so it patches the hole instead. The axolotl doesn't patch. Take a leg off and it grows a new one. Bone, muscle, nerve, blood vessel, in the right order, in the right places. It'll do the same with its tail, its jaw, parts of its heart, sections of its spinal cord, and pieces of its brain. And when it finishes, there's no scar, no seam. You cannot tell by looking which limb was the replacement. Which raises a reasonable question. Why does it get a repair kit and you get scar tissue? Here's the strange part. The axolotl never grows up. Most salamanders hatch in the water with feathery external gills, then go through metamorphosis, crawl onto land, and become adults. The axolotl skips the second half. It keeps the gills, keeps the larval body, and reaches full sexual maturity while still, technically, being a baby. It never leaves the pond. It never becomes the adult version of itself. And that isn't a separate fun fact. It's the same fact. Give an axolotl the thyroid hormone that triggers metamorphosis and it will grow up. It turns into a stubby little land salamander. Its regeneration gets noticeably worse. So the cheat code was never the limbs. It's the refusal. It stayed a child. And childhood came with a repair kit that the rest of us hand back. Number 7. The mantis shrimp. You'd assume body parts have speed limits. Muscle can only contract so fast, and nothing built out of muscle should be able to break physics. The mantis shrimp gets around that by not swinging with muscle. It loads with muscle. It compresses a saddle-shaped spring in its arm, latches it, and lets go. The way a crossbow works. The claw comes out so fast that the water in front of it can't move out of the way. The pressure drops, and the water tears open into a vapor bubble. It boils. Not from heat, from speed. Then the bubble collapses, and the collapse lands as a second hit, which means the prey gets struck twice by an animal that only moved once. Some of them crack aquarium glass, which is why keeping one is less of a hobby and more of a hostage situation. Its relative, the pistol shrimp, runs the same trick with a snapping claw, and when that bubble collapses, it emits a brief flash of light. Researchers measuring the collapse put conditions inside the bubble at something above 5,000 Kelvin, roughly the temperature of the surface of the sun, produced by a shrimp, in warm, shallow water, loudly enough that colonies of them used to interfere with submarine sonar. But the most famous fact about the mantis shrimp is the one that's wrong. You've probably heard it has 12 types of color receptor, where you have 3, and therefore sees colors you can't imagine. In 2014, researchers tested that instead of repeating it. They trained mantis shrimp to choose between 2 colors, then slid the 2 wavelengths closer and closer together. At around 25 nanometers apart, the shrimp starts guessing. You would sail straight past that gap without effort. 12 receptors. Worse color discrimination than you. The current thinking is that it isn't analyzing color at all. It's doing something faster and cruder. Recognizing a color the way you recognize a logo without stopping to think about it. When your job is punching things before they leave, accuracy is a luxury. Number 6. The wood frog. Bodies can't freeze. That one feels safe. Ice crystals forming inside a cell behave like broken glass, and a body full of broken glass is a body that has finished. Every winter, the wood frog freezes. Not gets cold, freezes. Up to roughly 2/3 of the water in its body turns to ice. The heart stops, breathing stops, brain activity stops. If you found one, you would confidently bury it. It survives by controlling where the ice is allowed to go. Before winter, it floods its own bloodstream with glucose, enough sugar that in you it would be a medical emergency. That syrup lowers the freezing point inside the cells and pulls water out of them, so the ice forms in the spaces between cells, where there's nothing delicate to shred. Then spring arrives, the frog thaws, and the heart starts beating again. And this is the part that's genuinely difficult to sit with. Nothing starts it. No signal, no shock, no vet. A heart that has been solid and silent for weeks warms up and resumes on its own, and the frog hops off to find a puddle and make more frogs, having spent the winter as an object. Number 5. The naked mole rat. No oxygen means minutes. That's the rule everyone knows from every hospital drama. 4 minutes without air, and the brain begins to take damage it will not give back. In 2017, researchers published something uncomfortable in Science. They put naked mole rats into a chamber containing no oxygen. Not low oxygen, none. Mice in the same chamber died in under a minute, which is what's supposed to happen. The naked mole rats lasted 18 minutes and then walked it off. The trick is fuel. Your brain runs on glucose, and glucose metabolism jams almost immediately without oxygen. The naked mole rat switches its brain over to fructose, using a transporter and an enzyme set that mammals mostly reserve for absorbing fruit sugar in the gut. Fructose keeps the pathway moving when glucose can't. It's a metabolic route that belongs to plants and intestines, running inside a mammal's brain, on purpose. And oxygen isn't even the headline. In the largest dataset anyone has assembled on them, their risk of dying doesn't climb as they get older, which breaks the most dependable pattern in all of mammal biology. They also get cancer so rarely that finding a case is worth writing up. A hairless, wrinkled, functionally blind rodent that lives in the dark is quietly better at 3 of biology's hardest problems than every animal you find impressive. Number 4. The immortal jellyfish. Development runs one direction. You were a child, then you weren't, and there is no route back. Every animal grows up, and growing up spends something you don't get to re-earn. Turritopsis dohrnii is about 4 millimeters across and looks like a contact lens with opinions. When it's injured, starving, or badly stressed, it does not die. It sinks, its body collapses inward, and its cells reorganize into a completely different form. It becomes a polyp again, the stalk-like juvenile stage it grew out of, cemented to the seafloor. Then it grows back up into a jellyfish. It can do that more than once. In theory, indefinitely. But that word immortal is doing a lot of unearned work. These things die constantly. They get eaten, crushed, and swept into places they can't survive. What Turritopsis is exempt from isn't death, it's aging. It has no expiry date built in, and absolutely no protection from anything else, which is a strangely bleak arrangement when you think about it. Biological immortality doesn't come with a shield. It comes with a rewind button, and a world full of predators who don't care that you have one. Number 3. The tardigrade. You can't pause. Metabolism runs or it doesn't, and when it stops, that's the definition of the thing being over. Tardigrades are about 0.5 millimeter long, have 8 legs, and move like a balloon animal learning to walk. When their water disappears, they pull their legs in and shrink into a barrel shape called a tun. They push out nearly all their internal water and replace it with sugars and floppy, shapeless proteins that set into something closer to glass than liquid. They're not asleep. They're not slowed down. Metabolism drops so far that we struggle to detect it at all. In that state, they've survived the vacuum of space on the outside of a satellite and radiation doses that would kill you thousands of times over. But the number that should stop you isn't from space. In 1983, someone collected a moss sample in Antarctica and put it in a freezer at -20. In May 2014, 30 years and 6 months later, it was thawed. 2 tardigrades and 1 egg came back. One of the adults took about 2 weeks to fully recover, then laid 19 eggs, and 14 of them hatched. The egg hatched as well, and that juvenile grew up and reproduced too. So it didn't merely survive 3 decades of not measurably existing. It came out the other side and started a family, which is more than most of us manage after a bad week. Number 2. The green sea slug. Animals eat. Plants make their own food. That line is the first thing anyone learns about how life divides up, and it is one of the cleanest rules in biology. Elysia chlorotica is a sea slug on the American East Coast that eats a stringy alga called Vaucheria litoria. It punctures the algal cells and sucks out the contents. And then it does something no animal is supposed to do. It doesn't digest the chloroplasts. It sorts them out, keeps them, and moves them into the cells lining its gut. A gut that branches out through its entire body like veins in a leaf. The slug turns bright green and grows into the shape of a leaf. And those stolen chloroplasts keep working. For months. Which shouldn't be possible, because chloroplasts depend on proteins encoded in the algal nucleus, and the slug ate the nucleus. So it's a solar-powered animal. That's the version everyone shares. Then people tested it. Related plastid-bearing slugs were starved for months in total darkness, and starved again with photosynthesis chemically blocked, and they survived just as well as the ones left in the light, losing no more weight. Which suggests the chloroplasts may not be solar panels at all. They may be a green-packed lunch that the slug is slowly working through. Nobody has fully closed that case. And the honest version is more interesting than the myth. We know for certain this animal steals functioning chloroplasts and keeps them alive inside its own skin. We're still arguing about what it does with them. Number 1. The animal that doesn't breathe. Everything alive uses oxygen. Every animal, everywhere, from a blue whale to something living in a hot vent. It's the deal our ancestors signed roughly 1.5 billion years ago when a cell absorbed a bacterium and kept it, and that bacterium's descendants became mitochondria, the components that turn oxygen into usable energy. Every animal has them. Every animal has a mitochondrial genome. That's not a trend. That's the floor. In 2020, a team at Tel Aviv University was sequencing tiny parasites related to jellyfish. In one of them, Hennegoia salmonicola, which lives in the muscle of salmon. The mitochondrial genome wasn't there. Not damaged, not shortened, absent. They assumed a mistake, because that's the correct response. So they checked the nuclear genes needed to run a mitochondrial genome, and those were missing or broken too. They ran a close relative side by side as a control, and that one had its mitochondrial genome exactly where it should be. Hennegoia salmonicola doesn't use oxygen. It is the first animal ever found that doesn't breathe. And here's what it actually is. It's a jellyfish, a relative of the drifting things with tentacles. Over evolutionary time, living inside a host, it gave up the body, the mouth, the nervous system, and the tentacles, kept the stinging cell machinery, and finally discarded aerobic respiration as well. It got simpler on purpose, until it had abandoned the one process we use to define being alive. And it's been in front of us the whole time. Fishermen have a name for the visible version: tapioca disease, the small white cysts you sometimes find in a fillet, harmless to people. Which means for as long as anyone has been cutting up salmon, this has been turning up on kitchen counters, and nobody realized they were looking at the animal that canceled its subscription to oxygen. 8 rules: regeneration, physics, freezing, oxygen deprivation, aging, metabolism, the line between plant and animal, and breathing itself. All of them things you were quietly taught were mandatory. All of them optional, somewhere. Because none of those rules were ever laws. They were averages, and an average only describes the middle of the list, not the edges. And biology has spent 4 billion years exploring the edges without asking anyone's permission. You'll take somewhere around 20,000 breaths today. You won't decide on a single one of them. It'll feel like the most fundamental thing you do, the one process that couldn't possibly be up for debate. It's a preference. Your ancestors made a choice. It worked, and you inherited it. And somewhere out there, folded into the muscle of a fish, Something is alive right now and has never needed a single breath in its entire existence.